Hey everyone! I hope you've still been memorizing those verbs in the simple past and past participle. Irregular ones are very difficult, so with an open eye and open ear, I promise you will learn them over time. But let's look at the pronunciation of ed verbs. Now these are regular verbs in the past and past participle. Let's talk about the pronunciation of ed verbs. Now remember, this is all regular, past simple, and past participle verbs. So first, we have the ed sound. This is used when the verb ends with a d or a t. The reason for this is d to d and t to d are impossible, so the e sound serves as a separation only. Now, this is the sound. So the E is not functioning necessarily as a vowel. It's serving as a separation. So I have two examples. Number one, needed. Number two, wanted. The next sound is with T. This is used when the verb ends with a voiceless sound. For example, we have K, P, S, SH, CH. For example, number one, liked. It's not liked, it's going to be liked. Number two, trapped. Number three, kissed. Number four, finished. Number five, searched. One way to help you get the sound out is to put a little more emphasis in the beginning. In the French language, we would use the name Gregory. In the English language, we would use Gregory. In Portuguese, people say Gregorio. So, make sure you try to keep your emphasis a little more in the beginning. Third, we have the D sound. This is used when the verb ends with a voiced sound. So, most of our verbs are voiced. For example, number one, robbed. Number two, loved. Number three, engaged. And remember that E will serve to make the prior vowel long. It's not engaged, it's engaged. 4, showed. 5, called. 6, named. 7, learned. 8, scared. And 9, caused. With caused, we can also use any other S or Z that has that Z sound. For example, amazed. Now, let's discuss something fundamental in the English language. The reason why we have these different sounds. The silent E. I'd like to give an introduction to the silent E. What do I mean by this? It's the E at the end of a verb following a consonant which functions to make the prior vowel long. The E sound is silent. If you've ever seen a verb like make, we don't say makey, we say make. The E only serves to make that prior A long. For example, let's use tape versus tap. Tape has a long A sound because it has the E at the end. Tap has a short A sound because there is no E at the end. So, how do I keep the sounds long or short? For verbs that end in an E, we only add a D to keep the prior vowel long when conjugating. Now, if I say an ED verb, this is generally where that comes from. So, for example, we had tape. That becomes taped. It's not taped, just like it's not tapey. It's tape and taped. For verbs that end in a consonant, we must add an extra consonant to keep the vowel short when conjugating. We'll get into this a little more when we get into a full lesson on pronunciation. But as an example, if we have tap, we added an extra P to keep the A short. It becomes tapped. Not tapped, but tapped. So make sure that you continue to listen and practice. This is one of the fundamentals of our language, with more rules to come later in our classes. Remember that in English, we don't use accents to represent where we would like to emphasize. If you wouldn't say likey, why would you say liked? It's like. Continue practicing these pronunciations and listening to the way that I use all of these pronunciations in our lessons. So let's cover the future verb tenses and why I have waited until now to introduce them. So first, we have the simple future. Second, we have the future continuous. Third, we have future perfect. And fourth, we have future perfect continuous. For each future tense, you must use either will or to be plus going to. Most of the times we just say going to. The importance of this difference between the future and the present and the past is that the future is both modal and a verb tense. So, we will cover the modal part in our next lesson. But the most important thing to remember is that we will focus a little more on the difference between will and going to, when there is a difference. First, will is an expression of willingness, which is to do something in the near future. If this is time and this is now, this is will. Next, going to is a prior plan made in the past for the future. So if this is time and this is now, this is going to. Let's look at an example of the difference between will and going to. Let's look at the differences between will and going to using the simple future. First, will expresses willingness at the moment to do something in the near future. Going to represents a prior plan that we made in the past for the future. Remember that both are also modal, and they have no difference if they are modal, but they do have a difference in terms of time. So, an example. Oh, there's someone at the door. I will answer it. Oh, it's Ty. And our next example. Oh, great, Maya and Ty are here. They said that they were going to arrive at 5 p.m. last week. I'm so glad they're here. Now, let's look at the other verb tenses. So let's look at the other future verb tenses. Now, while it is more common to use the simple future, there are times when it is necessary to use another verb tense in the future. And also, there are times that we can express ourselves a little better with the others. Remember, they can always be substituted for the simple future, but I will give you an example of each. Let's start with the future continuous. Could we meet another hour? I'm going to be studying at the library. Future perfect. By the time I finish my English lessons, I will have learned so much. Future perfect continuous. When I finish this series, I will have been teaching English on YouTube for years. Great! Now don't forget that both will and going to are also modals. So in our next lesson, we will learn more about will and going to with the other modals and modal phrases as we continue our journey. Thank you again for your time and attention, and I look forward to our next lesson.